this war is not just a one-sided war. Again, we should recognize NATO's role in creating this conflict in Ukraine after the U.S.-backed coup created a civil war. And that civil war between 2014 and the beginning of this year, before a single troop from Russia entered Ukraine, in the 8 years of this U.S.-fueled civil war in Ukraine, 14,000 Ukrainians died. The United Nations Human Rights Office found that 81.4% of civilian casualties in that civil war in Ukraine in the past 4 years were in the Donbass, the eastern region of Ukraine. That is, over 4/5 of civilian casualties were Russian-speaking Ukrainian civilians in the eastern region that were killed by the Ukrainian government and paramilitary groups backed by the West. That doesn't mean that we should support the Russian invasion, but we should recognize that this war was started by the U.S. and NATO, and taking the position of only condemning the Russian invasion but not condemning the U.S. and NATO for starting the war is not the anti-war position. NATO is not innocent. NATO, for its entire history, has been an offensive, warmongering alliance. NATO, when it was founded in 1949, included the fascist dictatorship of Portugal as one of the founding members. It has nothing to do with democracy. Throughout the First Cold War, NATO supported former Nazis and former Nazi collaborators in Operation Paperclip and Operation Gladio. NATO has been linked to terrorist attacks against leftists inside Europe, including in Italy, especially in the years of lead. NATO carried out a regime change war that destroyed the country of Yugoslavia. NATO also was deeply involved in Afghanistan. The U.S. invasion of Afghanistan for 20 years, the military occupation was a joint U.S.-NATO occupation. And then, of course, NATO destroyed Libya, the most prosperous country in Africa. And 11 years after the 2011 NATO war that destroyed Libya, there still is no central government in Libya. There are open-air slave markets for sub-Saharan African refugees. So anyone in the U.S. who has a progressive bone in their body, the number one demand I think that we need to have right now is abolish NATO.
So we've showed you that it's not Russian propaganda that the Ukrainians are hooked up with Nazis. It's for real. And everybody used to talk about it until this war. And everybody pretends they're just ultra-nationalists or something like that. Are there really neo-Nazis fighting for Ukraine? Well, yes, but it's a long story. That's what they say. Winning hearts in the PR war, Ukrainians has a Nazi problem that NATO and USA do not talk about. Okay, so that's all real. And then there they are. There's the Ukraine, and they're holding a Ukrainian flag with a Nazi symbol on it. And then even here's Ro Khanna, a guy who now backtracks on these words. He was telling the truth a few years ago when he said, ever since the Orange Revolution began under President Bush, the United States has been complicit in the rehabilitation and spread of neo-Nazis in Ukraine. Enough is enough, he says. Our government must stand up to the Azov Battalion and other fascist groups. He then went on to vote yay and vote funding those Nazis with $40 billion because Ro Khanna has just as much integrity as any other politician. Okay, and so why do I tell you all this? Because this woman here won a silver medal boxing for Ukraine. Her name is Diana Petrenko. She took second place, and she raises the flag. You want to see the flag she raises? Here we go. Oh, she got a Nazi flag. She got a Nazi flag.
Now, can you make it out behind the wolf's angle, the black sun? That I guess that was too black for them, so they turned it white.
They turned it white, yeah. Behind it is that thing, but that's it.
Wow.
There it is, and she doesn't even want to put it down to shake your hand. She wants to keep holding that Nazi thing. And they told her, don't you drop it for anything. Isn't that wild? That she's just allowed to bring a Nazi flag? Oh, she's going to say something to her?
He said, can you put that away, please?
Oh, she did tell her to put it away. It's actually kind of fitting for her to fly the Azov flag since she took second place. Am I right? Because the Nazis came in second in World War II.
What would Vince Lombardi say about that?
Here's another response. It says, didn't get the memo to remove the black sun. Azov Battalion troops. So there it is. They dropped their neo-Nazi symbol, and they, of course, exploited by Russian propagandists. So that's how they spin it. Oh, well, we got to get rid of our Nazi symbols. Why? Because the Russian propagandists are exploiting it.
They're going to use their whataboutism.
Here's another one. There's another headline. World Athletics reaffirm Russia's ban for track and field championships. That's from June 2nd. So now all Russians are banned, not the Nazis in Ukraine. That you saw the Nazi holding up the Nazi flag, winning a Nazi medal. Those are Nazis. But the Russians are the ones who aren't allowed to participate in world athletics. Isn't that kind of interesting? Russian, Belarusian athletes banned from Paralympics over the Paralympics. Even paralyzed Russians are bad people. Even they aren't allowed to compete. Doesn't it make you feel like you need a shower?